Hello, Ben.
Hello, Simon.
Hello. And welcome if you're watching this video. I'm Simon Oldfield. I am from Norfolk. I'm chatting to Ben, who is in Essex. And what we're doing in this video is just introducing you to a key element of the Essex Agreed Syllabus 2022. It was first published in 2022 for delivery in 2023. And I hope you're going to find this time really helpful while we focus on the philosophy of the multidisciplinary lens. The reason I'm involved is the Essex Agreed Syllabus is based upon the Norfolk Agreed Syllabus in 2019, and I was involved in the development of that, and I hope I can serve you all well today. This specifically is multidisciplinary lens training. That might well be a term that's familiar to many of you watching this, but if it's not familiar, my hope is through our time together, it doesn't just become familiar, but it becomes a concept you can buy into, grasp, enthusiastic about, and feel some kind of mastery about, because it is at the heart of the agreed syllabus that Essex are using. As I say, my name is Simon Oldfield. I had the privilege of being the chair at the point where the Norfolk Agreed Syllabus was put together. And I had the privilege of working with a couple of dozen colleagues who came together to produce this. When our syllabus was reviewed in Norfolk, we decided we didn't want to get an off-the-shelf one, but it definitely wasn't time just to review it, to renew it. So we needed to review. And we're really grateful for those couple of dozen colleagues who brought their expertise together. In particular, 5 colleagues specifically: Catherine Wright, Jane Chipperton, Gillian Giorgio, Richard Quay, and Olivia Seymour. The concept, the thinking behind the multidisciplinary approach came from their academic study. And we're really grateful that as a local authority, we could use it, and the intellectual property right lays with them, and so with the Essex Agreed Syllabus as well. So what comes to you today is a team of passionate RE experts who want the best for RE in its classroom and beyond. So here are our aims for the day. First of all, we're going to embed an understanding of what the multidisciplinary approach is to religious education. I hope you understand that I'm going to take you through as if you were a novice. If you've had experience of this before, then please do bear with me. But I think it's so important to understand the root concepts of this, because what gets expressed in our classroom flows through from that philosophy, and if the philosophy is different, then the outcome is different. So that root, if you have encountered it before, then I hope this enriches your passion, fans your passion into flame even further. We are going to get practical, and we're going to look at the application of the multidisciplinary lenses as well, and we're going to look at what those questions might look like. We're going to look at the philosophy aspect and home in on those. And finally, I hope you go away equipped. In the planning of this phrase cropped up as we were piecing it together, which is today is going to be a driving lesson rather than a trip in an Uber. I'm at an age where both my children are currently doing driving lessons, and they're itching to get hold of my car so that they can go places by themselves and not just have dad taking them places. I love that imagery for today, that I'm hoping by the end of it, it's not simply Simon says, but it is you have got a passion, an idea, and understanding, so you can go off on journeys of your own. That's a metaphor we can push through for quite a while. It's a powerful one for me. I hope it resonates for you, and I hope we meet that aim today. The 2 terms that are most crucial in the Essex Agreed Syllabus are the concepts of religious literacy and multidisciplinary lenses. I'm going to spend the bulk of today talking about multidisciplinary lenses and how that works. But I can't talk about those without ensuring a firm basis in religious literacy. And so that's where I'm going to start. As I mentioned, I'm at an age where I've got 2 children who are taking driving lessons. That also means I've got 2 children who have done the university thing. I know I don't look old enough for that, but hey, you just have to trust me. The best advice I got as a parent about to take their children to university, and that whole idea of how do you hold it together once they tootle off into those residencies. Well, there's a couple of friends who said to me, look, if you want to survive, if you want to do well, if you want to get through that page, then quite simply, just don't unpack any boxes. Leave them to it. Don't unpack the boxes. And that piece of advice came in really handy, and that's exactly what we did. And it helped my wife and I know when we drove from Norwich to Liverpool. We went via the think the biggest Sainsbury's I've ever encountered. We filled the back of the car, we took it to the residences, we unloaded the boxes, we unloaded the shopping, we hugged, we ensured them we loved them, and we drove away. And on the journey home, we discussed what the likelihood was that when we next connected via phone call, would the suitcases be unpacked? Would the ironing board come out of the plastic packaging? Would the pillowcases go on the pillows? Well, to our joy, 2 days later, a lovely WhatsApp video of this tour of the apartment. Wonderful. Offspring number one had unpacked their own boxes. They had acted independently, and they had this beautiful room. Oh, I was so proud. This idea of unpacking boxes and allowing students to unpack their own boxes at the heart of religious literacy. I hope you can see already where I'm going with this. We as teachers, just like any parent who's guiding their child up towards that point where they move out of home, we guide them, we help them, we do things for them, we model it. But then there comes a point where we let them go and we hope they take the knowledge they've got and then they use it. They unpack their own boxes. The end of the lesson, the end of a term, the end of a school year as they move on to another colleague, the end of a school phase where they maybe move to another school, or the end of an examination period. When they move beyond that, the students in our classrooms need to go and unpack their own boxes. They need to apply religious literacy, what they've learned. I hope I'm preaching to the converted when I say, whilst we are educators, we are not just about exam results. We're not just about those grades or those marks that they get. Our philosophy for education is something bigger, something beyond. And the obvious point to turn at this point is international cricket. So here's a quote by Andrew Flintoff. Apologies if you don't like cricket. This is a great RE quote. You might well have come across it before. Andrew, after he'd retired, said, I got 9 GCSEs at C and above, and the only one I failed was religious education, which is probably the thing I've used most since leaving school. Religious education isn't just about Christianity. Well done, Andrew. We're pleased you noticed. It was learning about the way which different people live. Going to India, going to Pakistan helped me no end in having an understanding. Andrew, Freddie, is unpacking his own boxes. He's taking what he's learned in a classroom and it is helping him in his professional, in his private and his cultural life. He's unpacking his own boxes. John Hall, who headed up the Commission for RE in 2018, wrote this. RE is essential if pupils are to be well prepared for life in a world where controversy is pervasive and where people lack the knowledge to make their own informed decisions. It's a subject for all pupils, whatever their own family, whatever their backgrounds, their personal beliefs and practices. The Commission for RE saw that RE is crucial as pupils in society unpack their own boxes. Our very own Ofsted says that an effective school prepares learners for life in modern Britain by equipping them to be responsible, respectful, active citizens who contribute positively to society. Religious literacy. Don't unpack the boxes for the students. We want them to unpack it. Being religiously literate is being able to engage with those issues in society around you without the need for a teacher to prompt you or give you a revision sheet. But equally, and this wording is embedded right there in the Essex agreed syllabus. What does religious literacy look like? It looks like holding balanced and well-formed conversations. When students go into the world, they get jobs, they become employees, they become employers, they sit on public transport, they engage in their neighborhood. When they encounter the different, the controversial, the other than them, are they holding well-balanced, well-informed conversations? Are they unpacking their own boxes? Are they being religiously literate? And we believe when we put the syllabus together passionately that in order to help them grow as religiously literate members of society, RE had to be multidisciplinary. The idea of RE multidisciplinary is crucial. This is what it says in the syllabus. It's about developing religious literacy. And they quote, "This provides a balanced diet, ensuring pupils are seeing religion and worldview through different lenses." You'll get used to that term, lenses. And it places RE within a strong, well-established academic tradition. So in terms of what a discipline is, we can get quite complex. These bullet points are really useful and really helpful. And if you want to read them in detail, feel free to pause the video now. However, here is the summary. A discipline is a specific stance. It's a way of looking at something, and we all do it. And to be multidisciplinary is to be rooted in a range of different disciplines, to have a range of stances. I'm recording this partway through July, and the summer school holidays are on the horizon. And to give an illustration of what we mean by different disciplines and different stances, let's consider how we pick our holiday destination. I would imagine for the vast majority of us, it isn't just one aspect. We have a multidisciplinary approach to our holiday destination. We have a number of lenses, a number of stances. We'll view the cost. We'll consider the climate. We'll ponder the activities. Each of those will come into bear as to whether we do go to Lake Garda, as you can see from my photograph here. Okay. Can we afford it? Is it going to be too hot, too cold, too wet, too dry? And when we get there, is it going to be the kind of things I enjoy doing? Are you a sit by a beach and read a book person, or are you wander up a mountain person? Okay. As education professionals, we have to take our holidays in school term, in the school holidays, and therefore there's the cost. And hey, climate, well, we'll discuss that, but it's a sense of different perspectives. Like many of you, I enjoy a good old Melvin Bragg In Our Time. And a couple of years ago, I came across an episode of In Our Time which talked about the eruption of Mount Tambora in 1815, and I knew nothing of it. But over the next 45 minutes, the reality of the importance of multidisciplinary lenses came home to me as I heard Melvin and his team talk about, and it got my brain going as to cross-curricular links, the impact of a volcanic eruption, which I would have initially thought was a geographical thing or maybe a science thing, then spilt into so many different areas. 1816 becomes known in Europe thousands of miles away as the year with no summer, which causes Mary Shelley to sit by the banks of Lake Geneva and write herself the dystopian Gothic novel of Frankenstein. Different lenses. Countries went to war. Landscapes by John Constable were drawn with those beautiful skies because of the volcanic dust. Some historians believe that the eruption of Mount Tambora precipitated the end of slavery in the United States, as there was a westward migration away from the well-established coast into the center, where people encountered slavery, where people encountered the horrors of it, and it rose up in a rebellion. All of this from an eruption of Mount Tambora. Now, I'm not suggesting we use Mount Tambora in our curriculum, but this idea of how we analyze one event from different stances is really clear.
Simon,
I hope.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were pausing there. Just in terms of where colleagues might have encountered this in their kind of their everyday teaching prior to this, I think anyone that's ever done a role play, a conscience alley, a community of inquiry, who's been trained or encountered philosophy for children, who's been involved in Mantle of the Expert, any of these involve that kind of focus on seeing from a range of perspectives and with a series of lenses, and deliberately choosing lenses that might not be those that fit your established view, or having to inform yourself in order to develop a particular lens with which to analyze a problem. And it all sounds very familiar, I think, from a range of different academic subjects and circumstances and key stages. So this is sounding familiar.
We're on wonderful territory here, and I think the crucial word you use there, Ben, is deliberate, because one of the aspects I would draw up is the example I give of Mount Tambora or the holiday is almost a sense of how the subject lends itself. Well, I think what we're talking about here when we're putting our syllabus together is to turn that around. There is a deliberate approach by us as professionals through the syllabus and through schemes of work and curriculum to deliberately ensure that the multidisciplinary lenses are there. There is an intentionality. And I think that will be crucial, because in terms of building up our students to be religiously literate, we're asking them to view the world from different perspectives. And here are the names of those disciplines: to be theologians, philosophers, and human and social scientists. Those are the multidisciplinary lenses that the team I quoted earlier believe passionately are rooted in RE and enable religious literacy to develop. And so those keys, those concepts, that strategy of bringing different angles, drawing that and deliberately rooting that in RE. Now, this circle appears in the syllabus, it's dotted throughout it, and there are some wonderful phrases. So theology, the idea of thinking through believing; philosophy, thinking about thinking; and then human and social sciences, thinking through living. Now, today we're going to focus on the idea of thinking through thinking, philosophy. But let's just have a brief look at how those three lenses might look different in practice. I live in North Norwich, just down the road from me. I've got a place of worship, a Christian place of worship, a church. And if I was to wander in there on a Sunday morning and ask these questions, I would get different responses because they operate in different ways. If I was to ask random members of the congregation about, maybe I've gone in after a Sunday morning service and asked them how you understand the nature of God, they would deal with that factually. It's a factual question, looking into their life. If I was to ask them if their belief in God is reasonable, it would get a slightly different tone of response, because I'm inquiring on a different level. I'm asking them to think about, there's a challenging approach to it, an epistemological level of, why are you doing the things you're doing? Not just what are you doing, but why are you doing it? And then finally, that idea of how diverse Christian beliefs have led to different expressions in music and art, that one group of people probably can't answer, because it needs a drawing back and a looking across, because human expression comes from a range of places. And I hope those three questions there illustrate philosophy, theology, and human and social sciences, but also show how they can be very different in their impact and in their response. But what I want to focus on now is philosophy, and head into that. This picture will be familiar to all of you. It's the Muslim gathering of the Hajj at Mecca, at the Kaaba. And what I just want to ponder now is this question: what questions could we ask about this incredibly rich image? Now, if I was gathered with you in a room, if we were doing training online and it was live, at this point, I'd probably pause for a minute and a half and say, jot down as many questions as you can about the Hajj. Ben, this feels kind of almost an inauthentic thing to do at this point in time, so we're not going to play that. I mean, if anyone would like to press pause and jot them down, then please do. But I'll imagine you've done that and you're back, and here are three different questions about the Hajj. And I think you can see how the lenses come into play here. What does the Hajj teach Muslims about Allah is clearly a theological question. How do Muslims perform Hajj is clearly a human and social sciences question. But we're in for philosophy today. Why is one place more special than another? What is it that gives a place significance? That view of knowledge, and then challenging around those. So again, if you now want to pause your video, go back to the questions you wrote, if you did, and just kind of do a T, a P, and an H next to them, so you can begin to identify from you, what is the different tone between those questions? What questions about the Hajj have caused a belief? Which one of them about human action? But then which one of that philosophical, that thinking, that challenging, that why level?
What you've got here, Simon, is really classic kind of constructivist opening to a lesson, haven't you? You presented something which is a stimulus, and you're opening up questioning where everyone can draw upon their own experience in order to kind of create some divergent thought. And then as a teacher, we're starting to pick our way through that, to look for the interconnectedness of our students' experience, to take their opened up ideas and to start to steer them towards what might be a discussion about a range of faiths. So it might be a discussion that steers into Islam, but we're kind of using a philosophical inquiry approach to open up thought here.
We're philosophizing about philosophy in a way, and I hope this is the point where we get into that driving lesson, where we're going to really dig into philosophy and look at that question of what philosophy is. So looking through this lens, and this is information you will find in the syllabus. The details are there about what philosophy is. It's about knowledge, existence, reality, and morality. It's a finding about how and why things make sense. How are we trying to answer those things? It's dialogue, it's discussion and debate. How do we think about the world? But crucially, it's about standing on the shoulders of giants. Human beings have asked these questions for millennia. We are coming to them, but we've also got scholarly aspects to learn. I read the phrase recently that philosophy is the sound of human beings being human. They're thinking about those causes, they're asking those questions. And whether it's Plato, whether it's Aristotle, whether it's Augustine, and whoever it is, there are giants that we can stand on the shoulders of. But gloriously in philosophy, we can also disagree with them, because they also disagree with each other. There's not a consistency here. And so one thing we just want to throw in there is, don't be afraid to pick a philosopher, to introduce them to your students, and to get your students to, yes, what do they mean and why are they saying this, but to argue with them. So they argued with each other, so we can argue with them too, because thinking about thinking is in that debate. Okay.
And that's
now,
these questions that people are still asked, the same questions being asked. That this is highlighting that when we're having a philosophical discussion, the kind of things that we're talking about are often things where there's no factual answer, depending on your definition of fact, depending on your definition of truth. There may well be a range of different answers for different people, different circumstances. We're not asking the what, we're asking the why. We're thinking about the process, we're thinking about the quality of argument, the quality of your reasoning, the perspective you're coming from. So it has the lovely sort of flexibility that we've got very open questions, haven't we, here?
And I think this is where religion and worldviews is really important as a term, because that sense of those stances from different perspectives, some of which don't fit neatly into a single conventional religious perspective, but maybe come from that wider angle of worldviews. Richard Dawkins would possibly be horrified at the fact that we might describe him as a religious thinker. He might not be, but certainly Richard Dawkins' worldview and his passionate conviction for atheism and humanism is really provoking. Equally, I think as a nation, over the last few months, we've all been helped and quite moved, regardless of our standpoints, where the religious viewpoints of Justin Welby, the current Archbishop of Canterbury, has guided us through both the death of a monarch and the installation of a monarch as well. And even if you don't ascribe to Justin's particular viewpoint, that sense of the religion, the worldview being useful and where it comes from has been really powerful. You can see on the screen at the moment, there are some, just the prompts, and if you would find it helpful to pause the video, pause Ben and I, and just to consider how here are areas where theology and human social sciences might well be natural. Okay, and we might flow into these. A Sikh attending the Gurdwara, well, the philosophical concepts of their faith and the theological concepts of their faith, and also the human and social sciences question of the importance of community might emerge quite naturally. I think one thing we discovered up here in Old Norfolk when we were rolling out the syllabus was really philosophy was the one that raised the most questions of how it can be applied. I'm not suggesting it was a new area, but that deliberate thing we referred to earlier. Philosophy isn't just about Plato in his cave or Augustine in the Fall. It can interweave into all these different areas. And so there's a range there, 7 of them, but at the moment we haven't got answers to these, but just that provocation of all areas are possible. But if I take you on to the next slide, so If you're familiar with the syllabus, you'll be aware that there is exemplar material, non-statutory exemplar material, whereby you've been provided with suggestions, ideas of what it might look like. They're all questions, that inquiry-based learning. And on the screen now, you can see, and it heads down, as it goes down the page, it descends the key stages from early years and foundation at the top through to end of key stage 3 at the bottom. Just a range of philosophical questions. And so if you're coming to this kind of, not sure about philosophies, maybe pausing it now and having a look at those questions, or going and finding that page in the syllabus will model for you the tone of what those questions are. Now, we've been very specific in the syllabus. Non-statutory and exemplar are really important concepts. These aren't, you're not limited to these questions. These are tonal questions. It's indicative of what we're exploring. And therefore, what we hope is, by looking at questions like this, by getting in that zone, and to use words that my students would use, picking up the vibe, you can then go and replicate that in your own setting in the issues. So these aren't limiting, they're equipping. Now the exam, sorry, Ben.
Those questions, I think, are quite nice to when you look at them in conjunction with the previous slide, when you're thinking about a topic that you might want to deliver, and then think about how can I use philosophical questions to open up thought about this at various stages of teaching it. And I think there's all kinds of things we could do where you had gurdwara. I love a bit of etymology and entomology, but etymology in this case, and then thinking about the words there. And gurdwara, it's so important, I think, in order to be religiously literate, to understand the words. But gurudwara, it's 2 words there: guru, dwara. Guru, teacher; dwara, door. And so the gurudwara, the Sikh holy building, is the gateway, the door to the guru, right? So then you start unpicking that. I think I'm sure there's a philosophical question in there about the nature of doorways and how doorways feature in our perception, our minds. Then we're into Aldous Huxley and the gates of cleansing the gates of perception. And then we're going to start playing doors. But you see that it's all interconnected, isn't it? And so I think just a few thoughts can take you to a philosophical question. You've got there, why is there suffering in the world? So that is the Four Noble Truths, isn't it? So if you think about, once you think about the Four Noble Truths and the fact that, or the idea, the Buddhist idea that all suffering is caused by wanting, you've got a lovely philosophical opener for students. You start by asking them, what do you want? Is what you want now the same as what you wanted, on your 4th birthday, if you're 6 or 7 now, and suddenly you're into, why do you want things? What if you didn't want things? And then you find yourself into a lovely philosophical discussion that takes you into the roots of Buddhism. So I think starting with a topic, then thinking about some philosophical questions and some stems, and these are all transferable from one religion or worldview to another. I think this is quite a nice process to go through when planning.
And you've now got me thinking about the gurdwara and the door to the teaching, and that sense of transition and journey, and the philosophical question of, well, why is change necessary? Why do I need to approach? And I wonder if what makes one person's teachings more significant than another? Why do I need to go through that door? And then we can look at the teachings of Christianity. We can draw that in, the teachings of Muhammad. And what is it that means? I'm heading towards the question of salvation here. Philosophically, what do we need to be saved from? What are the different aspects and why? I think, Ben, we're in danger here of drifting off course and having. It's fascinating, isn't it?
Emailing Sue Phillips for some advice on how to create a theatre of learning in my classroom to have the children through that doorway into it. It's all just the extra thought, isn't it?
But let me take you back then to the slide on the exemplar material. I'm hoping people are familiar with this. It's in the syllabus, and it's a non-statutory map of what a curriculum could look like. And the Norfolk and then the Essex agreed syllabus has based its content upon inquiry questions. The color coding you can see before you, blue is philosophy, the salmony color is theology, and the green color is human and social sciences. So what you can see there is across the course is an equal distribution of these lenses. Now, at this point, I just want to pause and talk philosophically about the syllabus as a whole, because our intention is that this is the level at which the lenses operate across a unit of work. You will naturally come across different lenses and different perspectives in discussions in lessons, and also maybe within a unit there might be a lesson on this and a lesson on that. But what we found at Norfolk, and what was the intention when we placed the syllabus in place, was for students to dwell a while on a particular lens, to not rush through. So as you can see there, year one, the first lens, what do my senses tell me about religion, the world of religion and belief? That's a philosophical lens. And for that series of lessons, they will dwell on being philosophers, not skirting through, not light touch, but having that immersion. They then move on to human and social sciences. They then move on to philosophy. So there's a period for each. And a bit like, okay, the longer you leave a tea bag in a boil in a cup of water, the more it infuses. So that opportunity for the lenses to infuse into the students, not just for them to observe them, not just for them to note them, not just for them to recognize them, but for them to be embedded. And then over the line of travel, over the 9 years of the syllabus, which if we go back into early years and extend it to GCSE and A level, becomes, sorry, I'm not good at maths, so all the time, more years, the students have had that diet. And I think one of the things that we were passionate about is how the RE syllabus is a marathon, and it's a marathon made up of many components, each contributing to it, and that weight of each one. So you might just be a teacher in 1 year, but you are contributing to that whole. I think to turn that around, you're not solving everything in religion and worldviews in one go, but you're contributing to that whole. So just that sense of dwelling on a unit, immersing the students in it. What I want to do now is just take some of these and show you some of the exemplar material. Now, I know I've mentioned it's non-statutory. I think one of the things we discovered in Norfolk was we needed to stress that it was non-statutory, because this is there to release, to equip, to inspire, to help. It's not there to constrain, even down to the fact that we chose 5 units a year. Some schools will do 6, some schools will do 4. We did think if you do, I think we came to the conclusion that if you're doing fewer than 4, you probably can't cover the breadth of topics needed to be religiously literate. And if you're doing more than 6, you're not going to the depth. Everything in education is a balance, because we'd all like all the time in the world. But this basis, 5 units a year, 9 years, what you have here, and then more importantly, what you've got sat behind it with the exemplar units, is hopefully resources that can inspire and help rather than constrain. Now, Ben, we're going to go on and talk about resourcing it in a moment. And I know we had some discussions about it. Shall I get on and talk about the resourcings from the exemplar, and then you talk about other options? How do you want to play it?
No, that sounds like a great plan. Then I'll just point out some broader, reliable places to go to.
Okay. So what I've done on this page is just draw out one philosophical inquiry unit from each year group. So whilst it's a specific question, that specific question represents a unit of work. So what do my senses tell me about the world of religion and belief? Wouldn't be a single question in a lesson. Indeed, it wouldn't be a single lesson. The intention behind the syllabus is a question like that would be the focus for a unit of work. If we would say call it 6 lessons, I know that's a bit of a cliched number. And all of these. This isn't the limiting to it. It's one example from each year. The idea being they revisit it. It's a spiral curriculum. They're embedded. They've got 9 years of philosophy here. One of the asks of the syllabus for balance of approach is there is at least one of the lenses in every year. So on our balance there, where we had 5, you can see that in most years there were 2 of 2 and 1 of 1. And spreading it that way. Okay, so there's that there. There's that encountering every year. Those questions, those inquiry units, are influenced by this spread of questions. And what we've done in the syllabus is we've provided exemplar statements. So there's an exemplar curriculum, there's exemplar units, but there's also, as well as the core knowledge showing you what should be covered, also there's a suggestion of what different questioning might look like in each lens at each key stage, and that's there to help and inspire you in your context with your students. Again, it's not a restraint, it's meant to equip and release. Okay, I'm not an Uber driver taking you to a designated place whether you like it or not. driving instructor saying, hey, have these skills and go and apply them. This is a copy, a screenshot of one of our exemplar units. We employed a range of teachers, outstanding practitioners, referenced and recommended by their head teachers in RE from across Norfolk, current practitioners who are excellent, outstanding in their field, who then got together and wrote these exemplar units. I do apologise. And within them, there is gold. If you are a year 2 teacher, whilst you can access the year 2 units, I would recommend downloading them all. They're non-statutory. You don't have to do them, but it also means that styles of tasks across them are a wealth. There may be, for instance, an activity tucked in year 6 that you could apply beautifully to your year 2 class. Now, I know there's a sense of reading there and going finding out, but what we want to do is equip, not restrain. We're not telling you to do this. So please have a look across them. Primary colleagues investigate the secondary units, secondary colleagues investigate the primary units, look across key stages. The gold that is in there from outstanding RE practitioners will be really helpful. And this is an example then of one of the philosophy units. And if we just dive into a bit of detail here, some example learning activities, and I just wanted to flag up this one at the bottom. So really the question is, what could a task to draw out the philosophy lens to build multidisciplinary lenses look like? So read a story from the Bible, so the parable of the sower, and discuss the meaning behind it. Draw out that idea. Maybe use the library, the school library, to get a wide range of stories, but that digging for meaning, okay, just to put a practical front there upon what a task might look like. Now, we've designed that to be in year 1. It's not restricted to year 1, but an example of a philosophical task. As we move further on, we've got the question here, a unit for year 2. Why do people have different views about God? And this highlights a possible task. Now, being aware of restrictions on how different religions might have towards artwork is really important. So here, this maybe is looking from the Christian perspective and looking at the idea of different images to God and comparing and looking at the beliefs around them. There's some wonderful imagery. I do apologize. About different aspects of Jesus and how different artists from around the world have depicted Christ, the incarnation, upon the cross, or and so on. So having a look at that and trying to discuss how people view God. Now, the task you can see beneath there, which isn't highlighted, brings in it from an Islamic perspective, where artwork and the Islamic request on artwork, the Islamic assistance on artwork, is completely respected. But then looking at those ideas of the 99 names and how those words draw out, and asking for the importance of them and the meaning of them. Discussion here about the depth of truth. Now, I think this would be an interesting discussion in a staff room, let alone a classroom. What do we mean about truth and how do we draw it in? And the activities here about a discussion for students about what is true and how that can be, and that understanding. Now, I suspect, frustratingly for some people, there isn't a concrete answer to this, but there is such a wonderful discussion to be had. If we were to go back to the ancient worlds, Plato and Aristotle would go toe to toe on this of what is truth. So allowing our students to explore and understand, yes, the complexities of the concept of truth is wonderful. Ben.
Well, I mean, that's great that you mentioned Plato and Aristotle. And for anyone that has wandered around the Vatican museums, you might have seen that image of Plato and Aristotle, Raphael painting, and they're in the words elude me, the Academy, I think. So you see them surrounded by all the Pythagoras and so on. And in that image, Plato is pointing upwards to what he termed the world of form, suggesting that truth comes from the heavens. There are eternal truths. There are things that remain factually accurate for all time. Whereas Aristotle is pointing to the earth and suggesting that is where truth comes from science and through that process. And that's exactly what you will see in your classrooms, is people drawing upon the source of their truth. And that's why that kind of bringing in those philosophers, understanding that these debates have raged for all time, and there is no fixed solution, and they're current now as well, of course. So I think that's so strong.
I'm just slightly worried now about creating an environment where teachers are right until we've sorted this. You're not having your break.
Agree to disagree, isn't it? Understanding the principles and the evidence.
Oh, and what a wonderful concept there. What a wonderful opportunity philosophy is giving, beyond philosophy itself, to disagree well. There's a philosophy.
And that takes us into teaching Socratic dialogue and how to have dialogue rather than discussion or debate. To talk without the intention of convincing another person of your perspective. And I think that we've got some really, really strong skills that can be taught through an emphasis on philosophy in the classroom, lifelong skills.
Yeah. And the other quote that I've highlighted on this task is much more from a traditional religious background as opposed to a philosophy and worldview. It comes from the Sikh concept of God. And this would be an example of how a quote from within a faith group can prompt discussion. One light fills all creation, that light is you. There are equivalent quotes to this wonderfully in all the faiths that we can find. And what does it mean for the light to fill? Where does that truth come from? And so using that, discussing it as to how that might, in this case, influence Sikh perspective and how they approach the philosophy and the why for Sikhs. I'm hoping as Ben and I are speaking, you're seeing not just applications for these in your classroom, but also how you could apply this to other ideas. For Christianity, I am the way, the truth, and the light. What did Jesus mean by that? What implication does that have? What does it mean to claim truth? Yes, teach the lesson and then head to the staff room and ask the same question and see how the colleagues go. I suspect that this was always a poignant question in any society, but it does feel very real at the moment with the political issues and the world that's gone on around us and division. That idea of what does it mean to be human? What are our rights? What are our responsibilities? And the task there, looking at how that operates. And one of the reasons I wanted to highlight this task is we've referenced humanism already, and I think one of the wonderful changes in RE classrooms over the last few decades has been that progress to non-religious worldviews and the importance of drawing in all aspects of society. So here, what does it mean to be human? That humanist perspective, and looking at the idea of happiness being the only good, resulting in that, and in drawing the students in. We want to fully embrace this concept of religion and worldviews, and we want to look at being in a Norfolk classroom, being really provoked by when we wrote the syllabus, the 2011 census, which really did show that the religious landscape in terms of faith is changing. And then subsequent to releasing it, the 2021 census has also shown that as well, that worldviews have such an amount to offer intellectually and practically, and to that discussion. So in terms of what does it mean to be human, drawing in as many of those aspects as possible.
Can I just jump in there? So for lots of people, humanism is either something which they've encountered and know something about, or and although we're going to talk about resources in a moment, I just signpost to point you towards the Humanist Association website, and any organisation which harnesses the power of Stephen Fry has an unfair advantage over many others, of course. But Stephen Fry narrates the videos that introduce humanism, and they're very good, they're very engaging, they're very thought-provoking, they're a great stimulus for discussion in the classroom. And by the time you've watched 12 minutes of various videos of Stephen Fry explaining, you will be overwhelmed with charisma, but no doubt also have a really good understanding of humanism.
Yeah,
A beginner's good understanding, I think.
And I think what you raised there is a significant point of where to go for resources. YouTube is a wonderful resource, but I think we're coming to realize that the YouTube search bar maybe isn't the best resource. And so to look at and to go via, I'm a science fiction fan, so for me the phrase "go to the mothership" actually means something, and I understand the concept. If you're not a science fiction fan, that might need some unpacking. But Humanist UK, brilliant resources for humanism, and similarly for the others. So
and what's worth adding there is that, I'll give a quick, a visit to the NATRE website in a moment. But NATRE, the National Association of Teachers of RE, have got lots of good resources on their site. But one of them is, how do I determine whether I should use this resource or not? And it is a guide to how to identify bias, to know how to work with that, because a lot of high quality resources do have how do we distance ourselves from bias entirely? Not possible, I don't think. So yeah, that's a good place to look.
I think a video about the philosophical lens is the place to ask the question, how do we differentiate ourselves from bias? So maybe that's a unit we need to do in the next agreed syllabus and teach. But almost, I wonder if we're here because of the existence of bias. Isn't the very essence of a religion and a worldview is about bias? So asking our students how to engage without being swept up or without dismissing. There's a fine line there. That's Socratic dialogue.
Yeah, to understand the usefulness of bias, to recognize bias within ourselves, and then to appreciate it in others.
Yeah, absolutely. Was it Socrates? An unexamined life is not a life worth living.
Yeah,
and that idea of how we view that, inquire on that philosophy. Maybe I think definitely the final unit I want to give an exemplar piece of work from and just show it how it could look in a classroom is maybe the biggest philosophical question of them all. Maybe the most unanswerable, I don't know. Philosophize on that. The idea of, is believing in life after death reasonable? And the first task on here, in a way, it appears to be quite a simple task, but the value of it is huge, of just looking and summarizing the different perspectives about life after death, not comparing in a sense of who's better, who's right and who's wrong, but just understanding the connections, the richness, the variety, the validity of the views that are in there, and that idea of noticing patterns, being that inquiry mind, finding out, and then understanding why that might be there. Ben, that was a whistle-stop tour, but looking at what philosophy might look like in practice, building up that idea of knowledge, looking at why things make sense, accepting that there are going to be difficult questions, and it's not so much looking for the answers, but how we try to answer them is the most important, that dialogue and discussion. But also, and they've cropped up, haven't they, the giants that have gone before us that have asked these questions, having that inquiry, and almost there's a fearlessness about it, isn't there? These texts which are hundreds, potentially thousands of years old, but to approach them with a boldness that says, actually, that's a question I'm interested in. Here's my, how can I inquire? So, Ben, do you want to talk about resourcing? I've got a final couple of slides to go into, but this feels like the right point for that.
Yeah, I would. I think we're looking at a very quick look at resources and where you can go for things, and probably a bit of an asterisk, I guess. I mean, the last slide you're looking at there about life after death, that's something when I've taught that, it's been year 8 perhaps, and it depends on your class and how to frame that. So I appreciate that. That's definitely we've got a secondary approach, I think, probably there, but that's one of those big questions that you might ask later on, or when the time is right, and there are obviously ways to do that. So I'm just going to share
just to say on that, Ben, the syllabus draws that into year 9. So
right, thank you. There you go. The gap in my
so in terms of that decline, the route down starting at 1, the is belief in life after death reasonable is a year 9 preparation for GCSE leading on to A level.
Of course, because you dipped into your list of 1 to 9, haven't you?
Yeah.
So thank you. Yeah.
We've painted the picture so to be holistic across the board, from the either bottom to the top or the top to the bottom or the left to the whichever way. The full breadth.
And probably what's worth mentioning there is, of course, that when you are deciding what to do, it's really important to consider not just the year that you're teaching, but where we're going over the next few years. So it's the RE lead, the head of department, whoever has responsibility for curriculum building. You really want to think about, as you say, the spiral approach, becoming a better philosopher, theologian, human social scientist over a period of years. And it really needs to be joined up, doesn't it? To look at 1 year in isolation, you're just not going to get to that sort of depth. You're not going to develop the skills that we're looking to develop, and you're not going to get it capitalize on what they've done previously.
And to turn that round from capitalizing, wrestling with the question of is belief in life after death reasonable is impossible if the foundation for the previous 8 years of being a philosopher and being trained isn't in place. We can't just arrive and out of the blue go, here's a question to discuss. That needs to be right. So when the students arrive at such an emotional topic, that they've got those skills that they've honed on other topics and therefore can go, actually, I can see how my year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 teacher prepared me for this moment. So it's a journey. It's a stepping through the door.
Yeah, you're really right that the question itself would almost have either no meaning, or it would be so emotive a response that would lack meaning if you haven't done your foundational work before talking about big questions like that. It's really interesting. Wonderful. So if I get you to stop sharing, Simon, and I will just share my screen for a quick whip through of those resources that people might want to make use of. I've lost my screen share. Okay, lovely. So I'm just on the syllabus there, which we might point towards where the philosophy features in that in a moment. But I would just like to draw attention to starting with where you might find some of the resources that Simon you were showing there, and this is the Norfolk website, which has links to, and I've done a walkthrough of this on another video, which was part of a meeting earlier this term, which this video will go out with those same links, which have been sort of circulated to Essex schools. But you can look at lots of examples of inquiries that people have designed here, along with the resources, and they're really beautifully fleshed out. So that's worth signposting. But I won't go into that in any more detail now. What I did want to point people towards was the place to go. So this is RE Online is a website that is created by RE teachers for RE teachers, really, and is incredibly well organized and managed, fact checked, and you can easily find your way through different religions and worldviews. And there are, I think, in terms of developing teachers' understanding, it's incredibly well put together. So here, this is the way this is done, is a kind of an essay with different stages that would walk you through core Buddhist ideas. If you were preparing to teach a unit on Buddhism, for instance, and what's worth pointing you towards here, I mean, do have a nose around the website, but here you've also got some really good free CPD courses, because obviously subject knowledge is so difficult to. We all know that those lessons that have fallen flat are those where we are less confident with our material, and so I would highly recommend RE Online for that. I know that actually most schools are members of NATRE already, the National Association of Teachers of RE, but they have really, really high quality resources on there. And you can find what I was talking about earlier, which was the the document that enables you to, how to find out whether a resource is appropriate for your usage. And then I would just point you towards as well TrueTube. Simon, you talked about YouTube. TrueTube is definitely a really reliable place to go for award-winning resources for our EPSH users. It's free to sign up, but you'll need to sign up in order to access their lesson plans. They have some really, really good early years, Key Stage 1, Key Stage 2 resources, as well as 3, 4, and a little bit of 5. They're really current. They reflect what's going on. And when, Simon, you were showing the overview of the year of RE earlier, what I was thinking about is, just that opportunity to tie what you're doing to what's going on in the world and to religious calendars as well. So the SHAP working group do, I think, probably the best value item I've ever bought for about £6 a year, I think. So their calendar that gives you all of the religious festivals, it's about A2 size, go up on your office or your classroom wall, and just that constant being able to make connections with what's going on in the world around us. I think that's a really good resource that I like. But yeah, this is a great website. Really, really good. Okay, but I am going to stop sharing and pass back to you, Simon, for those final couple of slides. And then I might do a very quick whiz through the syllabus, pointing out pointing out the blue bits on it before we finish.
Brilliant, brilliant. So I think my final contribution will be fairly straightforward, which is a bit of a homework task. And looking at these 3 questions now, just to consider while it's fresh in your mind, what might a philosophy question look like in your context? Whilst hopefully Ben and I have done the outstanding job needed to help this work for you, we'd look just what does that philosophy question look like? Then consider what might a philosophy task look like. Maybe think about something that happened in your classroom this week, an existing task, build a question upon it, then look and build a task, and then finally just consider what a response might look like. What is a student going to give you? We found in Norfolk this running this simple exercise as early as possible in the training help teachers solidify for them a model of what they're doing looking forward, and therefore taking that, because remember my example earlier, my metaphor, this isn't about a ride in an Uber, it's about a driving lesson, looking for independence. If you do have any questions, please do get in contact with Ben. Ben has got my contact details. From our experience here in Norfolk, we might not know all the answers. I might not know all the answers, but we probably know someone who does know the answer. We're 2-3 years ahead of you on the syllabus release, albeit most of those years involve COVID and lockdowns, but we are a couple of years ahead. So if there's any questions you've got about application, about what could be used, then we would be more than happy to share what experience we've got. Equally, if you have any successes, we would love to hear about that as well. That sense of sharing resources and blessing each other would be wonderful. Okay. But Ben, thank you. I hope that was useful. I'm going to stop sharing now and hand back to you.
Yeah, I think what you say about that kind of information, resource, knowledge, experience sharing is really important. And at the moment, the Norfolk site has got really good worked examples and knowledge builders and fantastic work there. And over time, Essex will no doubt develop something similar, and we'll cross-reference and continue to share. So I'm going to share my screen and just walk through just some particular bits of the agreed syllabus with a philosophy focus to them. So that's just back to TrueTube there. Okay, so I just want to focus on the philosophical bits and where they are and how you use them. Just a constant reminder of that. So we're going past the purpose, past the aims, past the requirements, past progress and attainment, past the quick overview of the 3 lenses, and into the first time that philosophy has its own section here. So what we've got here is your introduction to, I think I'll just make that a little bit bigger. Sorry. There we go. How's that looking on your screen, Simon? Sorry, you're just muted there at the moment. Does that look about right? Can you read
Yeah,
that?
if you can make it a little bit bigger, a
Yeah.
tad bigger.
Can go past that.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Well, on my screen, I hope it is on other people's.
Okie dokie. Right. So, okay. So here we've got our first exploration, laying out what the lens is. So explaining what it is, looking at the kinds of methods that we're using there. We've mentioned reasoning today. We've talked about evidence and sources. We're looking at the body of knowledge here. So Simon, you had mentioned earlier about moral ethics there. So our ethical approaches, we talked a little bit about the concept of metaphysics. So how our world views, how we understand ourselves and the world around us. A little bit of philosophy of religion. So those ideas, I saw the problem of evil featured earlier as well. And then thinking about the purpose is explained clearly here. So really, before you start your planning, I think really getting your head into the mindset, understanding the intention of philosophy, the method of philosophizing, before steaming into the questions themselves and how you're going to do it. And on the right here, if you were looking to develop your philosophical understanding, to draw upon good quality resources and so on, then there's some suggestions over here. But Simon, if you just want to jump in anytime there's anything that you think that I should add here or that should be added, then please do that. Okay, so moving on then through familiar territory there. And into, okay, so now what you've got is the table that goes through each year group, each key stage, looking at what theological, philosophical and human social sciences areas, questions, foci should we be thinking about. So here are those questions that might be used to frame an inquiry, which could then be fleshed out over a period of lessons to explore. And here are some suggestions for how you might do that underneath there.
Yeah, so this page is focused on the early years foundation stage. So in terms of the units for resourcing, in the exemplar units, for years 1 to 9, they're found elsewhere. This is that starting point, that crucial aspect of building those philosophers from the word go. I think children are wonderful natural philosophers. Why? Just wonderful. And so questions there that they might ask.
Thank you. Okay, and then we see this is how you go about building the curriculum. As I say, I won't linger over those areas that aren't philosophy focused, but I'll just mention them as we go through. Okay.
And I think these pages here then build on the early years, because there's a suggestion of the progression that could occur. We've talked around already that there is belief in life after death reasonable, how that's quite a mature in age topic. But here from key stage 1 through to key stage 3. Now this page exists for all the lenses, for philosophy, theology and human and social sciences. But what the intention of the syllabus here is to help that idea of the spiral curriculum, the development, and then just growing and training through. And we hope that this page is really useful in helping you go right. Once you commit something to paper, though, you may leave yourself vulnerable, because if I was to pick up upper key stage 2, for instance, teachers of upper key stage 2 who are reading this, they might go, well, that's fine, but I've got some students who would lap up the key stage 3 questions, and I've also got some students who probably need the lower key stage 2 questions, because that's the nature of students in a classroom. So what we would want to see is this page as an indication of progression, not a limiting factor to, I'm sorry, you're in year 6, so you need to stick to these. That's not the heart behind it. but it's that progression and that growth. And then if there are students who have grasped it and are moving on, not to be afraid to move into the next column as they grow as philosophers.
I think that it's quite easy it's an interesting exercise to start picking those trails through. So if I look at Key Stage 1 and I see what do my senses tell me about the world of religion and belief, and then I move into is seeing believing in lower Key Stage 2, and then maybe I went naturally to are angels real, because then that gets me thinking about actually, because these are not specific to a particular religion or none. You could use it for discussing a range of different faiths, or you could abstract them entirely from religion and then sort of take them back there. And then after are angels real, can anything be known for certain? Or then you can see all kinds of different pathways you might take here. But if you're designing that over a period of years, then you've got a really fascinating journey to take children on developing those skills. Lovely. Okay. Oh, and worth saying that the lenses are I was about to go into quite a detailed metaphor there, I think, but the idea is that you are not limited to only thinking philosophically. When philosophy is the driving force, there's still going to be some theology and social sciences in there. The reason that you've got the color coding is just so that it's almost like a mental signpost. Okay, make sure this is what you're really thinking at the core of what you're trying to deliver, put philosophy at the core, and then invite in those other discussions and thoughts and knowledge and content, but make sure that the rock you're building on is a philosophical one. And then the next time the rock is theology and so on. So that's making sure that you're getting those complementary skills and giving them the air time, because otherwise you could find yourself being drawn into overweighting one particular area.
And I can completely see a discussion with a teacher who goes, that's sending us down a theology question, isn't it? Right, let's ask this. And I'm now going to draw us back to theology, to philosophy. So name checking them. And then as the students develop through the key stages, they will be able to identify them, and they'll be able to spot those links and become more independent in it. But that idea, that having a bedrock, but then noting where the examples are, and that just highlights the interconnectivity of these.
I think that's maybe where you're, when curriculum building, making sure that you're trying to build the whole curriculum at the same time, or at least the objectives and the success criteria and the core knowledge you want children to develop, but so that you know that in your lesson, you know that your objective, it has a philosophical flavor to it, or so you know what it is that you're focusing on. And keeping your eye on that. Okay, so now we're into core knowledge summary tables. Now, this is where there is the suggestion of what might represent core knowledge in these areas. Now, it's not exhaustive. You could go beyond this. There are things that you might not cover, but this is a recommendation. So in this case, for Buddhism, these are the philosophical questions and areas that you might be exploring. Now, I'm going to do a video walkthrough of this, because if you've never come across the Jakarta Tales before, for instance, it's often quite easy to gravitate just towards what we know. But I think having an understanding of all of it to be able to make that choice, really an informed choice of what it is that you're teaching, would be really useful. So I'm going to do a walkthrough of that at some point. And so here you can see the progression over the key stages from philosophy and Buddhism, and the same there exists for each of what was once called the big six, but here, of course, you'll see humanism as well, because we really want to take time to focus on worldviews. And I think when you're thinking about religion and worldviews, there's a really great, I think, introductory video called "No One Stands Nowhere," which if you look in the information underneath that great video, you'll see links to the research that underpinned it, and start to understand the way that religious education is changing and has changed in the UK, to put a greater emphasis on understanding that mix of worldviews that makes up our diverse demographic. And I think probably on the word demographic, when you're making these choices about what you do with your students, this is to reflect their interests, their experience, their priorities, the priorities of the community, and that's why it's so important to feel empowered. This is why it's a driving lesson rather than an Uber ride. You are understanding the needs of your passengers. Metaphor ends there. Okay, so there we see through the religions that progression in philosophy, theology, and social sciences. And then, this might actually, okay. So there we have the curriculum map, which you've seen previously, and we've talked about several times, so I won't linger over that. You can see there's a balance. You can see it could be a spiral, and you can see the importance of trying to design that at one time. Now, obviously, if you are RE lead for Key Stage 1, then you're probably not going to be able to have impact on year 7, 8, and 9 unless you're in a through school and have that scope, which would be amazing. Yeah, that would be great stuff. But you can certainly have control over several years, and the teachers, perhaps in your context, all feeding into that and making that a joint effort would be great. And then I think I might have gotten to the end. Not quite. Okay, so here we have got, let me just go back up to there. So age-related expectations. Okay, so this is an interesting one in that this is a sample of the age-related expectations for particular units. These are just an idea that you might want to draw upon in order to build that curriculum. So if you're building curriculum in your school, you might think about the age-related expectations. It might be drawing upon the knowledge builders or the core knowledge that we walked through a moment ago. This is very much up to you as to whether this suits your approach, but it would help you.
What we found here in Norfolk, was that what the expectations were in the assessment process actually was a little bit out of the RE lead or RE heads of department's hands, and it's the school or the trust-based system. The age-related expectations flowed through all of the diocese schools, there is exemplar there to show pattern. The important concept is that the syllabus can track against any assessment process. There is not a requirement, but if this serves to help you map against something that you're using as you introduce it and combine it in, then we hope that's the case, but it might well be beyond your control.
Great, thanks so much for that. And I think that is just about, I think that is the last, and then we're into a bit of a glossary, some recommended links, and yeah, and that is the end of that syllabus there. Lovely. Okay, wonderful. Well, I think that is probably, that's the lot, I reckon, Simon. Thanks so much for your time, and for anyone.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for yours, drawing this together, and thank you for people sticking with us.
Great, lovely. Thank you very much. Goodbye.